Okay, so a doozy of a school board meeting, not quite as big as some of the other ones that we've had before, obviously, but one thing that I did want to talk to you about was this Taylorville School District electing to be a part of this ISBE lawsuit. Can you kind of go through what it's all about and sort of what was the decision behind the Taylorville School District to jump on board with this?
Well, Mike, we've been working with school funding reform for the past 3 years. And a group of superintendents and constituents from Taylorville and Pana and local communities around us have worked extremely hard trying to get our legislative partners to make some changes in regards to the inequitable school funding formula in the state of Illinois. Well, Senator Menard has worked extremely hard on this process and took this and really ran with it to promote the inequity within the existing school funding reform formula in the state of Illinois. And there's a group of districts. Currently, there's 13 districts. We make 14. But it's our hope at the end of the evening or next week we'll have 20 school districts from all areas of the state of Illinois that will file suit against the State Board of Education in terms of the not being able to adequately fund school districts in terms of mandated learning standards.
And you had kind of mentioned there that this isn't so much about, the school funding formula or how Illinois is elected to fund the schools. It's just the fact that in a lot of cases, they're not funding the schools at all. You mentioned also, too, that the school is yet to receive any FY17 categoricals as well.
Well, I think that this approach deals with the Illinois learning standards. Folks aren't against being held accountable or having standards, but we do need appropriate funding from our partner, the state, in order to achieve meeting those standards. And an underlying situation is these unfunded mandates that they have put on school districts that have constrained budgets and have added stress to school districts.
Another thing is the crowd was treated to a presentation kind of talking about the revenues versus the expenditures that the school has had over really the past, I think it was 16 years. Kind of go over some of the highlights, some of the points that you wanted to make with that presentation.
Well, it was just one more way, Mike, to highlight the situation with what's happened with our local revenue, our state revenue, and our federal revenue. And basically, there's the local revenue has gone up in terms of the total part of the budget because our partner, the state's contribution has decreased significantly over the years, primarily due to proration. And the district has lost $3.8 million over the last 5 years that proration did occur. And it has really created a budget juggernaut for the district.
And one thing that that kind of struck me about that presentation is it kind of relates to the school tax referendum, as you showed a chart showing some of the other local, taxes when it comes to their school districts, and Taylorville's near the bottom of that. And in fact, you mentioned that even with should this referendum pass, wouldn't even really go up that chart a whole lot. But one thing is that I'm sure, as everybody's familiar, that just that increase would tremendously help out the school district.
Absolutely. I shared with the board we'd actually move up 2 spots from the bottom. So there'd be 2 districts, that being Mount Zion and Edinburgh would drop below Taylorville in terms of that situation. But more importantly, out of that presentation, too, is the fact that Taylorville is 382 out of 385 school districts with its funding per pupil expenditure. There are only 3 districts below Taylorville that spend less of all the unit school districts in Illinois, and that is cited within the Illinois State Report Card. So it really does reiterate the presentation that was done tonight in terms of how the district has lived within its means, and that is reflected in a low per pupil expenditure.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about and get your opinion on is one thing that I've been hearing just kind of around town when it comes to the tax referendum is some of the opposition to it is that people are saying, well, this is money that in a sense we've already paid towards the Taylorville School District. It's just gone through the state, but obviously with the state being in the condition it's in, you can't really help that. One question they have is should the state for whatever reason get its act together and start getting money back out to these school districts? That would obviously, in the meantime, it would help out the Taylorville schools to be able to keep everything. And you had mentioned today that, if should that pass, one of the first things on the next agenda would be to reinstate everything. But I just kind of wanted to ask you, what would be some of the things that maybe the Taylorville School District might be able to do should that tax referendum pass and the schools start getting its money in? Because I think overall that would lead to an increased amount of funds available to the school district.
Well, ultimately, what will occur is that the money that's generated off of this referendum, if approved, stays local. It doesn't go to the state. We receive that from the county treasurer. So that's a good thing, that the state cannot get its hands on the local revenue that is generated from the referendum. I think ultimately, as we look to the future of the district, if the referendum comes in, it does begin to help the district in terms of maintaining the existing programs that we have. But there are items that the board would consider to enhance our educational program if funding is available. And I think that's the big thing is before you have that conversation, one, we've got to get ourselves back into where we're operating within balanced budgets again, when we have a revenue source that's coming in to help offset that. If the state were to get its act together, then ultimately the board has discussions about what additional programs or what enhancements that we would offer in the Taylorville School District.
So ultimately, it would enhance the educational experience at Taylorville overall.
Well, ultimately, that would be the ultimate goal, that if the state came in and started funding where it needed to be. And, over the course of time with the reductions that we've done so to be able to keep within our budget or live within our means. We would definitely have a conversation about where do we go from there.
And I wanted to end on a positive note. There is right now a lot of good things going on at the Taylorville School District. We saw a fine video that was done discussing some of the things regarding science and engineering going on at the 8th grade level. You had mentioned some of the accomplishments of the journalism program and some of the other students at Taylorville High School. Just kind of go over some of the, some of the good things that have happened at Taylorville School District in the last school year or so.
Well, we've had a phenomenal year, whether it be our extracurricular activities, our athletic teams have done well this year. They've been very competitive and have had numerous students recognized for their academics and recognized for their athletic abilities and their extracurricular abilities. But really what this boils down to is that we have a well-rounded educational program now where our students can come into our buildings and have a great education experience with the teaching staff that we have and the coaching staff that we have. And I think that's really been reflected tonight. The board saw a wonderful video clip from the community spotlight with Mrs. DeWerf, what's happening within our science at Taylorville Junior High School and the hotspot, the new room that was put in at Taylorville Junior High School, is a vision of students and staff. And then, of course, the journalism department continues to be award-winning. And then with Mr. Steele being recognized as the Journalism Teacher of the Year, once again, it's just a phenomenal accomplishment. I mentioned with our band program and the students that go off and compete at the All-State Band and the All-State Chorus in the band concerts. People are used to seeing the Marching Tornadoes in those types of things at activities. So, we've really, it really makes you proud to be the superintendent of such a fine school district with the kids and the teachers that we have.
Thanks, Dr. Fuerstenau.
Yep.